people, what's good? It's your girl Namaiwa, CEO and founder of Girl Grind UK, and we are back with Girls on Her Grind Series 2 with another episode. And this time we're catching up with a powerful leader called Erica Love, and we're going to find out about her grind and how she's doing it. Thanks for being here.
No, thank you for having me. I was very honoured to be invited.
Yeah, I feel like you're such a brilliant person, and of kind of connecting with me in lots of different capacities. So it's interesting to sit down and speak about your life and what you're doing in leadership in this context. So I'm really happy that you accepted.
No, I hope I can do you justice.
No, I'm sure it will. I mean, I think the best thing about this is having a real conversation and connecting it with people who sometimes have these conversations on their own. And there's sometimes the silo of being a leader and leadership and art and culture and then advocating for people. You do end up just having a conversation with yourself. So hopefully people join in.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So welcome to Girl on the Grind podcast. Do you want to tell people who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Erica Love. I am the Chief Exec of Culture Central, which our role is to convene and challenge and connect people and places through culture and create opportunities.
Yeah, amazing. And how did you get there? Because I feel like that is that's an interesting position to be in now.
Yeah.
But yeah, how did you arrive at that?
You know what? And it's a really interesting journey, and it isn't one that most people would, I suppose, it's not this traditional journey into leadership or indeed even specifically in arts and culture. So, I started working out in businesses doing call centres when I left college. I didn't go to university, but I suppose, I became good at working with people and understanding what people needed. And so then there was an opportunity that came up called Creative Partnerships, which is 2005, which would be 20 years ago in April. And that was my first job.
Yeah, I think I was literally just whipping out of school.
Thanks. Sorry. Oh no. That's like when saying my daughter's 22 is scary.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was in 2005, and I started as an operations and finance manager with an organisation called Creative Partnerships, which was all about creativity and young people, and so working with artists and schools and creativity in Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire. So definitely with some young people who who'd faced lots of different challenges in their lives already when they were working through school, and just found a love for that approach and the importance of creativity in young people's lives and therefore in everybody's lives. And so that was my journey. Well, that's where it started, and carried on as the operations and finance manager for a while until it finished, and then took on the role of leading that organisation as a director of a CIC in 2012.
Yeah. So just for context for people who don't know what a CIC is, what?
So community interest company. So basically I've been kind of managing the charity with the team and with the director, which we become, and then when the funding finished, because it was a funded programme, we took it on as a community interest company, so I could lead that. The rest of the team kind of had different ambitions for their career, but I really cared passionately about the work that we were doing and the work that we could do. So yeah, I wanted to take it on and do that and lead it.
So how do you if we was going back to early Erica and figuring out and navigating what it is you were going to do, would you say that you kind of fell into those roles, or did you choose them with a clear mind of that's what I want to do?
No, it was definitely, to start off with, I fell into that space. No, the operations manager role, I remember seeing that and going, oh, that will bring together the things that I know I am good at, which was, financial, operational management, event management. I was good at that stuff. And I knew that would be a strong thing for me to do.
Yeah.
But then also this was a sector that I remember, had enjoyed when I was younger, but thought it was something that was really good and passionate. And I think I've always wanted to do something that was really values based.
Yeah.
So the job sort of took me in that direction.
Yeah.
And I remember really, really wanting it. I remember being around at one of my best friend's house, and got the phone call to say I've got it, and I have never, it's probably one of the happiest I've been.
Yeah.
So, but then in terms of that next stage of leadership was definitely, I've learned something along the way. I care about it, and it was a gap. I think there was a gap and needed somebody to step into it.
Sure. So how do you stay like motivated in the in-between spaces of transitioning into jobs, and then I guess sustaining that, especially when you're doing like advocacy work or being a voice in some capacity for creatives or people that are like developing? Like, where do you find the bit that's like, yeah, I'm up at 6?
So yeah, I really don't get up at 6 a.m. now.
I'm so surprised.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're giving me 6 a.m, walk the dogs in the park, coffee.
I don't have dogs. I have cats
That's like the school
specifically.
one.
I've got cats specifically, so I don't have to get up and walk. So.
Okay.
So yeah, I've got 2 cats, but no, I definitely don't go up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I get up at 6 if I really, really have to, and there's got to be one. So yeah,
I would like to be a 6 a.m. person,
me too.
but then if there's no flight that I'm leaving to get to the airport for, it's not making any sense.
No.
Yeah, no.
No, I'd love to be one of those who gets up at like 5 to go to the gym and
Yeah.
be really motivated
Oh
to do that.
yeah.
I mean, I do definitely go to the gym, but I'd much prefer to be there at 8, 9 o'clock at night rather than I would 5 o'clock in the morning. So
Okay, that's
yeah.
interesting. Maybe we'll come back to that because it'd be nice to see how you like mind map your multiple responsibilities in life and finding that time. But I guess it's a nice lead into the question of like, so how do you stay motivated in the in-between bits between jobs you're transitioning in and out of, and then also when you're in a project or in a company and you're sustaining that like energy for yourself to like dig deep for other people in whatever capacity?
It's a really, really interesting question, and I don't know if I have a conscious answer to that in terms of how I specifically think about how I motivate myself. I think the work itself motivates me. I think I've always been motivated by a range of different tasks. So I get excited about new things, and when a new opportunity comes in, I suppose being in that position of leadership or in a CEO role, especially with a small organisation, both at Partners in Creative Learning, which is the organisation I was talking about, and at Culture Central. My opportunity is to do lots of different things. So there's days when I'm picking up finance and looking at the management accounts and presenting that. There are other days when obviously I am speaking in front of a huge room of people and I've got to prepare for that. Or there's other times when I'm managing and delivering a programme or having difficult conversations. So I think the motivator is, for me, it's a personal motivator of is not always the same, and I'm not sure I could do a job that was the same all of the time.
Yeah.
But also the people that I work with are brilliant, and my teams have always been fabulous. And I think I care about the work. And so even, I suppose, when I got to the sort of, before I got the job at Culture Central, when I applied for it, I think I was in that space of what do I need to do next? I feel like I've done this for quite a long time now. I think I've done it, for 10 to 15 years in various forms.
Yeah.
And I think I was definitely ready to be a bit more ambitious and do something that was a bit bigger.
Yeah. So I kind of know I'd like to think in detail some of your strategy with Culture Central and your plans. So when you're beginning that new space and you're stepping into a chief executive role of an organization that already exists, that already has a way about it, how do you go in with the plan? Or how do you approach one, starting something new, and then coming in as an expert strategist to be like, I'm going to shake things up?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I never saw myself as an expert strategist.
You didn't?
No, but what's
Projecting you.
I'm great that you think that as somebody on my board.
Yeah, no, I really back your plans and your strategy. Yeah.
But I don't think I think when I came into this role, I mean, I was, it was a member, it was a colleague that I was working with, and I said, oh, the job at Culture Central's come up, and you're like, you should go for that. You'd be brilliant at that. And I was like, would I really?
Yeah.
And they're like, yes, I think that'd be really good. I was like, okay, let me go for this and see. And I think I saw that my role was to be a collaborator and to bring people together and to think about how I could build the organisation through collaboration and build that partnership and its reputation again. Yeah. So I think that was where I took the role initially, or where I saw the role. And when I started, it was just about Birmingham. It was just about, trying to understand what was happening in the city, understand the organisations, I suppose, for people to understand me and my approach and, what the challenges or opportunities were. And then COVID happened. And so that completely changed the approach, my role, the organisation's role. And that's a
So in
massive
the
catalyst.
time, do you feel that you had space for you to heal? Because, you know, being a chief executive, you're the one who stays up latest, locks up shop, da 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 da, in those figurative terms. But in a time of crisis like that, especially such an unpredictable, I remember jumping on Zooms and you were just on it. You know, you were there for people who were your members, who were part of that. But did you feel like you had that time for you in that space, or did you just have to be on?
I think I just had to be on.
Yeah,
I think, you know, I used to go out running quite a bit, and
yeah,
that was my time to decompress or do some, you know, workouts at home, cook with my daughter when she was at, you know, at home working. Those are probably my decompression. But I think because I think I'm driven a little bit by that kind of help and support and being able to, you know, be, and you know, I get energy off other people. I
yeah,
am a massive extrovert. I mean, not surprisingly. Um, so I get my energy from other people. So I found that, I think, quite
yeah.
energizing space.
Right. Okay.
Whilst it would be obviously exhausting and also really challenging.
Yeah, sure. So that's nice that n- well, I don't know if nice is the right word, but like the responsibility of responding and reacting is suited to just what you're good at. So yeah, you could say you was definitely the right person at the right time, in a crazy time, in the right place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you know, and I have to, you know, I know that was such a challenging time for so many people, not just in terms of the sector, but individuals. Um, and having to navigate all of that, as well as, you know, the worries about being sick, you know, being ill and all of
Yeah,
the other knock-on effects of all of that, you know, social isolation. And but I have to kind of not credit it, but yeah, I have to look at it as a real turning point for the organisation and the leadership in which I was
yeah, sure.
ended up kind of being in and taking forward, really. And
Yeah.
the organisation would not be the organisation it is today, I
Mm.
don't think. Well, it might be. It just would have maybe had to have a different catalyst.
Sure. And I mean, it's nice in my next question for you, really, which is about the future. But I guess before going into that, like leaning back into the past, I want to kind of just what are your thoughts on legacy? And do you feel that in previous roles where you've led people or you've made a difference, are you kind of like intentionally thinking about what mark you're leaving is like a life map of Erica was here or is here. That's a weird way to say it.
I don't think in my, I mean, I suppose probably in my last one, but it was probably more about the individual young people that the program or the organisation had impacted on. I mean, what's also, you know, it's not ironic, it's, you know, interesting, is that organisation now I am the chair of. And we've got MPA funding in the last round because of the kind of a partnership and approach and things like that. So there is a legacy on
Yeah.
the work, and obviously still part of that. But I think I'm much more intentional about legacy with Culture Central,
Right.
because of, I suppose, the reach of the organisation, what it's trying to do, and what the mission and sort of
Yeah.
vision is. It feels very much like, actually, there is something that I want to have, well, want the organisation to have achieved by the time
Yeah,
I
sure. And
get
I
there.
guess the mechanisms to accomplishing whatever the vision is naturally makes it easy to track vision because you see progress from point A to point B,
Yeah.
and that kind of just happens as a result rather than maybe a specific plan.
Yeah. And well, and you know, we have started to think about legacy plans, you know, certainly in terms of the organisation, and thinking about,
Yeah.
you know, what the organisation might look like,
Yeah.
and some of the opportunities that come through. So, you know, a lot more intentional this time. And maybe it's not a personal legacy, but it probably is a little bit, actually.
Yeah, because you're invested clearly in everything you're doing at the time you're doing it. So some of that is going to carry the essence of like your vision. And I think that's not a bad thing. You know what I mean? It really isn't. So it's nice to think about the past and legacy whilst in the present in terms of looking at the future whilst in the present. What do you think in 10 years' time, say, you know, what is it that West Midlands creative and cultural scene looks like? And the caveat to that is that COVID was like 5 years ago and it feels like it was yesterday. So 10 years isn't really
No.
It's not a lot of time.
No. And then in 20 years I have been working in the sector. Similar, conversations are they're still very similar to the ones that were had
Sure, yeah.
15, 20 years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
And around lots of things, and not just about the sector itself, but the way it's perceived, the way that people think
Mm,
about arts and culture,
yeah.
society in general. Those conversations are still the same. Same, they've moved on a little bit, and we hope that we've kind of moved some of that story on. But I think I'd really would like to see some shift in the dial in terms of um who leads the sector, or who is ready to lead the sector. I really want to kind of see that spirit of collaboration that was started during COVID to really grow and develop.
Yeah, I
And that. I mean, that for me is a big one.
faded a little bit, let's be real.
And yeah, I mean, I think it's, what it is. So, and just we're talking about leadership, but actually, I think what's the challenge is there's just such a problem with capacity at the moment, and when resources light, we know it, we see it in the wider world, don't we?
Yeah.
When resources light, people struggle to do that collaboration because you still got to look after your own
It's
organisation.
kind of survival though, because
Yeah.
like if there's like sorry, the toilet roll from COVID flashed in my mind. But if food resources or petrol resources are low, then you'll see people shift their behaviour. Neighbours become two doors down instead of being right next door, because you have to survive, and that is a part of leadership anyway, to decide on how we, or whatever your we is, like how that's gonna survive and then thrive and come back again. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
cold as that is, it's survival.
And so I think the intent is there still, and I think I've definitely seen a lot more collaboration since then,
Yeah.
and that connectedness, and a real willingness to share the same story of voice, and know why that's necessary as
Yeah.
well. So, but I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to see leadership shifts, and I think just people being excited about the work that they do. I think the
Yeah.
sector's quite drained at the moment, because of resources and
Yeah.
people, and so I'd like to see a sector that's enjoying itself.
Yeah, that's a nice way to phrase it. I guess on that point of wanting everyone to enjoy themselves, like, so when I go out, I like to go to environments where the lights are down. Like if I'm in a club, if the lights got turned on, I'd like freeze up immediately. I'd be like,
I would have.
no one perceives me. That would be like my thing. But that's because I trust the space. I trust the environment. I tend to go to places that I know, and that's where I can enjoy myself when there's trust there. I know that Culture Central's mission's rooted in like collaboration across the arts, and we've just said and both agree that the sector is fragmented and it's like challenging for various reasons. How do you personally, and then as your role at Culture Central, how do you see ways to build trust and to build the spaces that you can enjoy and you can call almost home in the creative sector? Like how do we actually do that? Not to have a finished answer now, obviously, but throwing mud at the wall until it sticks. Like how?
Trust's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think trust is twofold. I think one, it's about, do you trust the authenticity of somebody? Do you trust the authenticity of the space, or the individual or the organisation? And then there's something about then delivering on what you're saying, because we can all be very good at saying one thing and having an intent, and then not necessarily following through. And I think trust comes from both of those things, which is around your authenticity, your real truth, your personal and professional truth.
Which both are equally important, like especially ethically, like can't challenge certain ethics.
Yeah. And then trying to deliver on that. Not that I mean, nobody is ever going to be perfect. There's loads of things that you can't do, and you just have to be really pragmatic about that. And but we say that, being transparent. I think one of the things that I really, I suppose, I think is that transparency. I wouldn't want anybody to think Culture Central was a mystery, or that I was a mystery.
Yeah.
And
That's interesting. Yeah, I get that.
And I think that has been potentially, it's like, what is that, quite a large organisation potentially, and we're a team of 5 people, but I think because of the scale and reach, it feels much bigger than that.
Yeah.
And so I think, try and be as open and transparent about what we do and why we do it and how we can do it as well. And sometimes going, that's not within our scope or our remit, or we haven't got the resource to do that. But this is what we're really trying to drive forward and push.
Yeah. Interesting. So obviously you've worked across lots of different roles, held different capacities that have through lines in like the characteristics of a person that kind of needs to fulfill that role. What are some of the most like valuable lessons, maybe we pick 2 or 3, that you feel have carried you in that space, and essentially just shaped how you are?
I think, that's really an interesting question. So in terms of lessons, I think life as a young age taught me lots of lessons about resilience,
Okay.
and just sometimes just having to do things yourself and crack on, and nobody else was going to sort it out for you. So you've just got to do that. And I think that's an important, when you're in that leadership role, you can't always be looking up to somebody else, because most people are looking up to you.
Yeah.
And not saying that though, I have lots of people who I would class as, people I could speak to, Cassie, our chair, for example, Geraldine, who's my deputy, the board themselves, lots of friends who I can definitely go to. But as a leader, you're the one who's kind of like, you've just got to sometimes get it done. And make decisions that even sometimes they might be hard. So there's probably valuable life lessons there from being young. I think creative partnerships, that approach to, seeing young people thrive through creativity is such a forming value and such a forming sort of learning for me, that cements my like purpose. Like I saw it in action and it made me believe in it. And I think that belief and drive, and sometimes is probably a little bit of my learning is when somebody tells me I can't do something, definitely going to be doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you what's your star sign?
I'm a Gemini, and not that I believe in any of that, but yeah.
Really? You don't?
No, I not really. I always think, and this is, this is right for a podcast, but I think, how can everybody who was born in that period of time between there and there have the same things happen to them in life? Just the realism, like.
Yeah. I don't read horoscopes. I think that's the bit which is saying all Geminis today are going to have this feeling, or all Aries. I'm an Aries. But just when sometimes it's like seasoning cupboards, you know what I mean? Like hot chili, bit of paprika, turmeric. That's how I view them, because like it's a specific little type of spice,
Yeah. And people will probably say that. I remember, gosh, my mum did my star charts when we were little, so it's not.
Yeah. Okay. So if we think of the world or the arts world as having an unfinished to-do list, I'm based and rooted and at home in the music industry, and I feel like that to-do list is as long as 2 people's arms, to fix things, to change things, to shift, especially on gender equality and the visibility of like disabled creatives and artists working in the sector. I feel like the music industry is still quite sexy on the surface. Whether that, is superficial or not is a conversation over to the left. But I'm just quite big on fixing that to-do list, or contributing to fixing it through Girl Grinds. I feel like in some ways Culture Central has like a responsibility, and I guess as a result of that, to address some of the to-do lists that the West Midlands specifically has on like addressing problems like that in the arts and culture sector. So I guess the question really is, what's at the top of that list?
Oh, can you have a top of it? This is a top.
Yeah, fair.
There is a big list though, yeah, and I think.
Why not the top? Why that question? Is that because they're all equally
I think one necessarily can't always be done without the other.
Right.
If that makes sense. So
sure.
There's got to be 2 sides of that shift, hasn't there? There's got to be, in terms of, certainly if you think about that inclusivity or the diversity of leadership, it's not just about the organisations who the organisations themselves kind of being willing and open and, you know, changing their practice to ensure the shift in leadership. It's also about creating a whole cohort of people who are ready to step into those spaces as well and being supportive of that, and kind of seeing that whole ecology. So on sort of that piece, there's that bit first, you know what I mean? That's on the to-do list, but it's got to be on both sides of those things, because one can't happen, you know, without the other, really, in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, there's something you said there that I kind of want to go back on about the being ready, because I think what happens in arts and culture is that like, and you know, there's lots of different types of data and reports to like support that idea of what happens at a grassroots level or an emergent level. And then when you get into the intersections of like who people are, you can see how the readiness speeds up or slows down for whatever reason. And I find that really interesting as a point. It's not really a question. It's just like, how do you get ready?
You know, and you know what, ready is probably not, maybe ready is not the right word. Maybe it's more, yeah, it's wanting to,
Right.
some of it is the willingness to it, because it's quite challenging, or seeing themselves in that space, as well as feeling it's equipped. You know, there's something that, like, I think one of the, when, you know, you sent me the questions through, I was like, there was something around about supporting women in leadership, and I was like,
So
what is that? Yeah. And I was like, what do I do to do that?
yeah.
And actually, it's about creating space, but it's not just about creating the space in a void. It's not just about going, here's a space, off you go.
Yeah.
It's about, here's the space. How do I support you into that space?
Yeah,
And I think that's what I mean by not being ready. What's interesting is, you know, I've just recruited a new executive director for Pickle, Partners in Creative Learning, as the chair. And the person who's got it is absolutely fantastic. And, you know, she highlights that there's quite a lot of development needs, that, you know, there's lots of things that she's got to learn along the way
for herself.
To be able to run that organisation in the same way. And we'll need that support and development. But what she had was the kind of skills, the kind of core values, the energy, the drive.
The unteachable things.
Yeah. And actually, there's lots of things that you can just learn by doing.
Yeah.
But you've got this other things that kind of you need to be supported to be able to that, or to have that in place, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's like a keen eye. It's like how you put an outfit together, to put that in almost layman's terms. Sorry to all the fashion people in the world, but like, yeah, style, finesse, those things that are just oozing out of like you and why your magic makes that work, you know?
Yeah.
Do you think everybody has that, or can acquire that, or do you think it's just for a set up few people?
I think it's up for people to decide themselves whether they think that they have that. That sounds like, I would hate to write anybody off, you know, to go who, because they, you know, you thought, well, you're not you don't look like me, or you don't have the same traits as me, or, and the other way. And that's something we often do a little bit too much, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think everybody has the potential to do everything, but also accepting that not everybody wants to either. And how do people find their own place in the sector, but in the world as well?
That could actually be the one thing that fixes everything on the to-do list, you know, because I think that's a big statement to say that one thing could fix it all. But like, I feel like accepting people and having a willingness to like almost talent spot and almost see that, like, as you present now in this current example, the potential of you could change the world, or the potential of the way you think with the right resources and the right support. And to some extent, taking a chance on somebody with like good discernment to make a decision, obviously, but like that could fix a lot of issues of not being presumptuous or just pigeon boxing people to where they are, or even what you think.
Also, and know what you don't want to do. Like, I don't want to be an artist. I would be an absolutely terrible artist. Like, it's just not not something that I desire or want to do. And in fact, actually, most of the team, well, no, I think probably all of them have their own creative practice in some way, shape, or form. But, you know, seeing that and going, doesn't have to have been somebody who's worked in that sector as well.
That's quite powerful to know, you know, to know when to say no and kind of not trying to be everywhere in every place doing everything, you know, just like this is good for me and like I'm gonna drill down on that. I like that. I find it in the for creatives and people that are like freelancing, that's quite challenging to just be one person, to just be one thing. Um, would you have any like advice to somebody who is in the process of discovering their voice to say no, and then also, you know, still finding their lane? Because you discovered your things that are good about you. Like, for example, the first job you talked about being a match of all the skills you had that was right for you. Like, how could somebody listening like discover that for themselves? Are there any practical or physical steps that you take to like empower yourself to get to that no place?
That's and again, really difficult question to ask that practical advice, because so much of what I've done is just kind of like how you do it, as in how it's happened,
Yeah.
and you're not necessarily always conscious about it. So, but in terms of a kind of a conscious way, I think, you know, if you get home at the end of a piece of work and it's exhausted you, but you've
Mhm.
not enjoyed it and don't feel elated, is that the right thing for
Yeah.
where you're going with it? Also recognizing that, you know, freelance work is precarious,
Mm.
and you know, it is challenging to go no to things when there's pieces of work, because it's your livelihood and income, and we don't necessarily have the luxury. Freelancers don't necessarily have the luxury of, you know,
Yeah, saying that.
saying no, if we're
Yeah.
really honest. But in terms of how you build, what's the work that you go towards? And there was a really interesting. I remember reading Chris Hadfield, who was the Canadian astronaut who went up onto the space station.
Okay.
He wrote a book about life lessons from space, and I remember reading this and thinking it was great. And he said that everything that he did in his career, every choice that he made, was because he ultimately wanted to be an astronaut. Like one in how many,
Mm.
like I
It's a
mean,
hard job to get.
yes, yeah, but and you know, you've got to have done a lot of things to have got there and have all
Sure.
this. But he said with every time he was making a choice, he chose something that would get him that step, that
Mm.
bit further. Even if he never got there, he would make a choice. So if there was a choice like, you know, do I go and join the Navy to be you know, a fighter pilot?
Right.
Yes, I'm going to go and do that, or I might take that job because it might take me a step further. And I
Mm.
don't know if that would work, or that does work
Mm.
in some of those spaces. They might just be little things, but each piece of work that you bid for, that it's something that you feel you really care about or want to do, or is, you know, is part of your creative practice,
Yeah.
and choose that. And yes, you might have to do some other things on the side, but you then start to build an experience of the things that you really want to do, and don't be afraid to go for those, even if
Yeah.
it feels like they're not what you've always done.
Yeah. It's giving me the energy of like don't mission creep, but like almost for yourself. So it's like once you've got to the point of like discovering and playing around with ideas of like what becoming is for you or what you want to do, it's like not shape shifting or mission creep into something that's completely nothing to do with it for no reason. You know, it could be that you do need to go a little bit round and to the left of the plan, and it might not make sense to people all the time as well. But actually, if you hold that space for yourself, maybe that is the answer to mission creep. I want to talk about women. I want to talk about gender. But the way I want to kind of discuss that with you is like women in powerful positions. I find it like, I don't know, sometimes I find it quite annoying, the perception that women in leadership positions are like super strong and aggressive, and there's just a heaviness to what it feels like when people discuss people like you and I as women in leadership positions. Um, and there are challenges that we face that are undeniably gender based when we are in meetings, navigating, traveling, uh, being respected in making decisions. Have you faced any challenges like that or different?
I mean, I don't think there's a woman on this planet that hasn't sat in a meeting and, you know,
Been
certain
manipulated?
times a man has, you know, talked over them or taken an idea, or, you know, and I don't even think you have to be in a position of leadership for that to happen,
Right.
unfortunately. You know, and it happens. It happens to me still. You know, that's not. I don't think that shifts or changes. I like to think that that I choose not to lead in that kind of, I've got to be really strong. We can't be vulnerable. We don't have to behave with that, you know, I suppose that male persona as a leader to be a good leader. In fact, I think the thing that you know, that is that women bring to those spaces, make it a nicer place to be. If I'm really honest, they bring different attributes around, you know, understanding things, being a bit more emotionally aware sometimes. And that's not me dissing men, you know, not all of the time. Not everyone behaves like that, you know. But if you think about it in general, in terms of that kind of style or stereotypical style, like put it that way. I think I celebrate women in leadership in a way in which they work, and hopefully they don't have to behave like a stereotypical male leader to get on.
Yeah. I can understand actually, like just reflecting on what you said, like why why it's easy to adopt those attributes and why it's easy to think that that's the right way to do it, because we see that more often than not. In terms of like your own leadership and maybe other female or women or people with female bodies, like when they're in those positions of leadership, can you tell a difference? Like, is the more broadly speaking, like is um good leadership got a feminine energy?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because I think there's yeah. I'm trying not to diss the whole of the, you know, half of the population. And again, it's not true. It's not true that everyone behaves in that way.
Yeah.
You know, but I think women bring with them something that is a bit softer sometimes and a bit more empathetic,
Yeah.
and purpose driven.
Yeah. Yeah.
Generally,
Yeah.
not all. Like, again, it works both ways, doesn't it? But that would be my experience. But also, women, unfortunately, often have like massive imposter syndrome as well in those spaces. So how do you overcome that? I had it, and there's still less and less so as I am going through. But I still have that massive imposter syndrome. When I applied for the job at Culture Central, I was like, no way they're going to give that to me. Like, that's a big job. How do like? And actually, you get into the job and you go, oh no, we can do that.
Yeah.
And we do it with kindness and with, you know, appreciation, and with that real spirit of collaboration. It's not got to be we've not got to be the head of.
Yeah. I was talking to Nicola from United by the other day, and she told me this story about a friend of hers who went for a job. It was like a six-figure crazy salary. Like it just meant that she needed to work in Scotland. And she was like, oh, well, you know, at interview, she was like, oh, you know, I don't really want to leave my kids and I don't want to travel that much for work. I'm at a different place in life. So she kind of said it to them and denounced the post. Then the person that actually got the job was a man and negotiated a higher salary, and that he wasn't going to leave where he was living, and he was going to do all of the UK-wide travel remotely. And when I was told the story, I was like, because even I was thinking, I was like nodding along, like, yeah, I get that. So I get why she walked away. But actually, why wasn't the automatic thought to, well, negotiate your terms? And why didn't she know how to do that? And it is because stemming off that imposter syndrome of like not really demanding things from people in the ways that men do sometimes, but also in a way that just stands up for what you actually need, you know?
It's that value, isn't it, that we place on ourselves, and knowing that we're damn good at what we do.
Yeah.
And we should be shouting about it. And I suppose that's our role, isn't it? Is to tell other women that they're damn good at what they do.
Yeah.
And to step into some spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. We turn 5 next year at Girl Grinds, and I definitely want to do more of that, because I think there is a lot of spaces that you can go to discover community. There just is, especially in the West Midlands. I think there's quite a healthy balance of people starting new things and creating spaces and events. But we can always just have more.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
And congratulations on 5 years.
Thank you. I've still got my weave intact. You know what I mean? It's been a journey for sure. Yeah. But actually, to that point, it's a great opportunity to thank you for all the support you've given us, because I feel like Thunder in particular has been a backbone to us and really sustained like the middle of whatever's going on in Girl Grind. It's always given us a chance to not always think about how we keep the lights on and just have capacity to think and to create and take risks. Yeah. So thanks, because you backed the application. That was our reference. I'm very grateful for it. So yeah.
So I really believe in what you do. So
Gonna get a bit mushy, thank you. So I know that like part of your role at Culture Central is to represent people, community, culture, the sector in general, and some of that's being directed to places like central government, regional government, and navigating like those types of spaces in order to make change happen. And that's like a massive responsibility. So I guess like, how do you prepare either mentally, emotionally, strategy to kind of command those spaces? Like, how do you speak to power essentially, if that is the definition of a form of power?
I think there's a few things. Mentally, it's been practice, as in sort of practicing doing that.
Yeah.
And getting it wrong a few times and getting anxious. But then preparing yourself physically as well for certainly if it's a face-to-face conversation or an interview. I was thinking again when you sent through some of the questions, I was like, what's an example of where I've had to kind of really prep and I've been felt like anxious? And it would have been the BBC Midlands Today interview, a live interview.
Yeah.
It was only, regional TV, but all about the Birmingham cuts. And it was like, that's a really difficult conversation because the whole of the city is about to,
Yeah.
be cut in terms of all of the different services. I've got to champion culture in that space whilst being really sensitive to all of the other things that are going on and all of the other ways in which people feel and the impacts that those cuts are going to have on people. And so it was quite big in terms of how you try and get the tone right, again, the strategy. And so it was about being really clear, but being really prepared about what I knew. I know the sector, I know the value of it. And I think just sticking to that really closely, getting that message really, really clear.
Yeah.
But then lots of breathing, went and got my hair blow dried.
Yeah.
It's spent a lot of time just going through those things. I'm a firm believer in a bit of power posing, if I'm really honest with you, which is just making yourself, that bit bigger and trying to get your body to do what your brain doesn't naturally want to do around raising your testosterone and reducing your stress hormones.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I kind of love that you said about preparing the tone of what you know, because actually that's the bit that's like muscle memory. So you can't freeze up on what you know, because it's real to you and you're prepared for it. And I think sometimes at different levels of power, so obviously there's lots of different types of people engaging with us through this interview. It's kind of like in some ways other people might say you just got to stick to your guns, real recognize real. You got to know yourself and stand up for yourself and just be who you are in those spaces, potentially to like get through it, fall on that.
Yeah, and that's what I do think. I do try and make sure I'm on top of most things that are happening, but also admit when you don't know as well.
Sure.
There's a little bit of that, isn't there? That's going. I'm going to stay right away from that. I think I was asked for an interview about a renaissance and of artistry stuff, and I was like, don't think I can speak to that, and I'm probably just going to fail if I go into that space because it's not what I'm good at. There are much better people, and I think again it's that space of one thing that I think has been a real strength of both, Culture Central, the team, is recognising where our strengths lie and where there are other people that are just better at doing that stuff and working with them or trying to develop a partnership, I've totally gone off the question there, sorry.
No, it's all good. I think in some ways you haven't, because it's really about like even within that, it's again what we were just talking about, saying no and being able to know enough about yourself and what you can speak to. And then what we spoke about before about mission creeping. It's like it's not my remit, it's not my bag. So I don't need to go into that in order to do something, nothing just exists. So we've talked like a lot about responsibility,
Yeah.
and being in those positions that hold gravitas or hold weight for real decisions that affect real artists and arts organisations. Um, I wonder if we could, if there was a person that is watching this video that wants to become a creative leader, like how there's lots of ways you can become a leader. Me personally, I feel like people who want power shouldn't be given it. And obviously, just my political views, like, in fact, I'm not even going there. Sorry. About to offend the whole of Texas. Yeah, so I believe personally that people that want power shouldn't have it. And I think true leadership almost looks like being elected, being dubbed, being named a leader because people want to follow you, and um it's not force. It's like you're allocated that people come to you or look to you for advice. So I guess going off that, like, how does somebody attempt to become a leader? What's the first few things that you do? Is it like working on your self-esteem? Is it mapping out a plan? Or like, how could we leave somebody who is watching, who wants to look at leadership, especially emerging and young women who are in that space and still trying to navigate it? I just wonder whether we can come up with a few ideas.
The thing, what's, again, really interesting, isn't it, to think about leadership? And does leadership have to look like what we're talking about leadership in that space? Leadership happens every day through a range of different sort of, like you're saying about creatives. When we designed Collective, which is Culture Central's leadership program, which is open, by the way, for applications. But we talked about that being a leadership anti-leadership program, which is about how people think about leadership differently. And people are leaders in their own space, whether they lead an organization or whether they lead a book club of women reading together that provide support and advice for each other. Leadership has many different ways in which it can look. So I suppose for me, I think, is what is your skill in terms of bringing people together? And that's about leadership, isn't it? It's about how are you driving change through collaboration for me. That's a personal thing. How are you bringing people along with you? What do your relationships look like? And what's that style of leadership? I'm a firm believer in a style being a collaborative style of leadership, and that being the most effective one. It doesn't work. Some people are just visionary, and some people just want to go and drive something forward, and that's fine. But that wouldn't be something I could
do without.
that I could relate to as a leader.
So do you think you need to almost like start by trying to find your narrative? Because if you know that collaboration is the way to do it, you tell parts of your story that involve collaboration to engender like more of that. I wonder whether it is being able to articulate, and I guess to you directly, like how much of your story, because for me there's big parts of my story that I just leave out, because I just think sometimes it's like I just go straight to the point, focus on the meeting at hand or the thing at hand, and there's no time for the rest of it. And then other times it's about my own privacy and wanting to still protect myself in a space whether it's in the media or in the arts sector, I personally feel it's still quite unsafe for women to fully disclose who they are and be vulnerable. And sometimes I just can't be bothered. It's just one of them days where I'm just like, yeah, you don't get the whole of me today. You get that bit that I'm choosing. But do you think telling a story is like essential?
No, I don't think it is. But I think it's about the connection that you have with other people, even if that story, maybe if you're not giving everything away, there's lots of things that lots of people don't know
Yeah,
about
yeah.
me.
So
Many
it's
things that probably probably shouldn't be shared. But also there are lots of people that I've trusted with that story if it feels like that's gonna be something that helps
yeah.
them, and something that, relates to people to be able to provide some kind of support or leadership to.
Yeah.
And I think it's about finding that space. And if somebody asks me a question, I'm very, very straightforward and very open and honest. But like you say, often it's not the time. Sometimes you've got to do it. But you can lead through practice, I think, lead through modeling behaviour. I tend to find,
Yeah.
if I'm talking in a group and it's collaborative, I make sure that there's space for people to talk and that I'm keeping an eye out on who's in the room and that they get to speak if it feels like they've not done, or you construct a program that ensures that people are able to contribute and be a part of that, a part of those conversations. Was Yeah, my recommendation to leader is like, yeah, find the thing that's your mission, maybe a little bit.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Even I'm thinking as I'm speaking as well, because we've kind of gone off
Yeah.
bits, but it's good. It's good. It's real. It's gonna speak to somebody who's in that space, and I do really like that. For me, the threads that I'm picking up in our conversation are about knowing yourself and and kind of leaning into that a bit more. I like the last piece there, which loops into everything about um examples of leadership through collaboration and through by example. So showing, which supports the idea that like to be a good leader, you need to just do. And I grew up hearing "build and they will come." There's one big massive saying, and I think it comes from the Bible, but I'm not sure. But you build something, you do something, and the people that see that and resonate with it, they follow. And yeah,
Yeah. And I think then, yeah, and empowering other people to be
right up there with you.
with that,
Yeah.
not trying to gatekeep it, and yeah, and going, this is for all of
That
us.
was another one. I'm sorry, but you brought up the word because I think it's that for a lot of people, and I feel like I speak for a lot of creatives, a lot of women, a lot of queer people, a lot of black people in saying this. Like, there is a big problem with gatekeeping. It's massive, and there is like specifically in like Afro-Caribbean culture in the UK, there seems to be this ever-present one in, one out situation of like there can only be one person of a complexion or of a race at a time. And I think it is moving, but it does result back for me at gatekeeping and who's in the position. You said something earlier, can't remember it verbatim, but it was something around like when we were talking about like legacy and positions and like inducting people into power and like nurturing them through that to change some of that script of like who's the custodian, like who's the custodian of this great thing that has power and decision making and can let people in or out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be like that, should it? I remember it's, I'll go back to the job that um that I started with, 20 years ago. I remember my boss at the time when I got the job, when I had got the job by then. She says, great. She says, but we nearly didn't give it to you because you hadn't got any arts and cultural experience. And I was like, okay, wow. And that was when I was 24, and I was like, but I have so much experience in operations and finance, but because I didn't have that. And I thought, those are the things that we need to change a little bit,
Yeah.
which is, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if even for me, like I do really resonate with that point. Like I was talking to another artist the other day, and we both agreed that we wouldn't want another artist to manage us because you can't have. Well, it might work in some cases, but the most ones I've experienced and what I know is that it's kind of in like business academia world. We're talking about like Myers-Briggs. Like you need bits of a team to like make it function. Like I'm probably the like idea driver, never switch off person at Girl Grind, whereas other people in our team are pragmatic and logistical and data driven, and that's the balance of like you can't have the same managing the same or contributing, so that's kind of unfair.
I mean, and I mean, I'm dead, I'm so grateful for the team I have at Culture Central.
Yeah, it's
They are
brilliant.
absolutely brilliant team. And again, all of us with really different skills, really different, I suppose, drivers, really, different approaches.
Yeah.
But that's so valuable
Mm.
for the organisation. And the same as the board, there are so many. It's great to have that range of voices in a space, so you're always able to kind of think and really refine what the way in which you're going to do something, because you're listening to other people with different
Yeah.
experiences, different skills. Anthony and I laugh all of the time. He works, from a very kind of, Anthony thinks like top first, like kind of real strategic, really not theoretical, but in that kind of space.
Yeah.
And I'm very practical. And that probably comes from my career about that kind of operations and finance. And Anthony with, amazing project manager, but also kind of the academic head. And what we often do is we find our way going through this, meeting in the middle and finding a real mix of things. And those, and then you've got Charlene who, just, absolutely fantastic about understanding people and challenging those things. And well, the team are fantastic.
Yeah.
And but also, again, that's about intent, isn't it? Is when we're recruiting for jobs now at Culture Central, of course there is. We've done a lot of work around taking out, essential qualifications, for example, or understanding people's direct experience of a job. So we don't have CVs, but what we do want is to find people who fit the organisation, who add value to that, and who are able to shape themselves within it as well. That it's not always, I think when Charlene started her job, it was very different than the one that she's doing now. Same as Anthony, actually. It changes depending on what the organisation needs, but also what the individual wants to drive.
Yeah.
And that's important, I think.
Yeah, very. I love that. Well, thank you for coming to chat with me.
Edit it kindly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Dee is editing it, so if anything you're joking with, you just go to her. Go to that one.